Okay, now we're on to the handle. First thing we're going to do is true this end up, make sure it's nice and square. And I don't know if you can see it from there, but I can already see it's quite a bit out of square. Maybe once it starts spinning, you'll see that. So we only have about 1.5 inches or so sticking out of the chuck. It's in here securely. We're only going to use the cross feed. It only goes straight across. Only thing it can do. So if this is mounted in the center line of that chuck or in this headstock, and this only moves straight across, if I make a cut this way, the only thing it can be is square, unless there's something wrong with our machine. So I'm going to come in, make a small cut, and I'm going to feed straight across. Now, I just made a tiny little cut because I want to show you something here. I'll brush that away so you can see better. I don't know if you can see it because it was such a small cut, but there's a little bit of a nipple right in the center. That means that either this cutting tool was a little high or a little low. What we're going to do is bring it into it and look, and yes, I'm a little low. So I'm going to do this without hitting the camera. Keep that lined up, raise that up. There is an adjustment on here, which is a stopper. Adjust that down. Now we should be lined up perfectly with the center. You can back out. That time it left no nipple, so we are right on center. The next step is going to be to center drill the end of our piece. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil on this cutting tool, on the center drill, to lubricate that. Now, instead of like with a conventional drill where the drill bit spins and your piece stays still, in this case, the drill bit's going to stay still and your workpiece is going to rotate. What we're going to do is feed this in till we're about 2/3 of the way up the sloped part of this center drill. Because what we want to do is to put that taper on the inside of the end of your piece. It's probably good there. And loosen up this tailstock, slide it out of the way. What we've just done is, oh, there it is right there. We've cut a taper on the inside of that matches our live center. So when this is supported on here, that's actually going to engage fairly deeply into the end of your piece. And then this will rotate as the machine, this end spins it. That end is on a bearing. It'll be in the tailstock. It'll allow it to spin and be supported. And then you're going to do that to both ends. Face it. Make it nice and square, and then center drill it. Once you've got both ends done, then we're going to start turning this down to a specific dimension. Okay. When we were facing, we had the cutting tool angled so that just the point of it, it's just a single point cutting tool, was engaging it as it went across. Well, now we want to turn to a dimension. We're not going to come anywhere near close to it. So what we're going to do is loosen this off, rotate the tool post till it's engaged with it, and again, it's only going to engage with that single point. Tighten it back up, good and snug. You don't have to kill these to get them tight. Now, move that out of the way. The other thing we're going to do is, now that we've got that taper here, we've got the live center here in the tailstock, we're going to slide that down. Then we're going to tighten the nut on this one. Some of them it's just a lever. Tighten that up so it doesn't move. Then we're just going to take out any slack with the wheel. Up top is a lock for this, so move it so that can't back out. everything's locked in place now. So then I'm going to roll down this way, and you guys probably can't see this. I'll adjust you here in a second. So I'm going to come down till the single point is right at the end of my piece. I'm going to adjust you so you can see it. Now that we've faced and center drilled the piece for our handle, we're going to mount it in the lathe. So we're in the chuck at that end, snug down. We're going to slide the live center into the end of it, and you can notice as we go, let me loosen that back off for a second. As we go in, that tapered portion fits right in that center drilled section. When we tighten that up, it's well supported, so when it rotates, this end can't vibrate. So when we slide this into place, right, we're in here. I just showed you up close. We slide this in. So the end of that center is in your center drilled hole. Snug down your tailstock so it won't move. Take out any slack that might still be there. So just snug. You don't try and really force it. And then this is a lock to keep this from being able to just back out on you. Now the next step is going to be the most basic thing, or the most basic purpose of the lathe, turning to a dimension. All we're going to do is remove material from the outside of this until it's down to the dimension we want. Right now it's at 3/4 of an inch. Our finished dimension that we're going for is 0.650 or 650 thousandths. Come down to the end, into where we're going to touch, just about. So I'm going to back off a little, start the machine, come in and touch off, which means to come in and make contact with your piece. And you'll see a little silver line as soon as we make contact. So I'm just going to come past the end a little bit, take a little bit of a bite with the cross feed, and then as we advance the tool, it takes that amount of material off of both sides. Now, in this process, the human is the least reliable piece because consistency of speed as you're traveling is really hard to have. Some people might be really good, some people might go way too fast. Well, you end up missing part of it. You're traveling fast, the machine can't keep up. So, to make up for the lack of consistency of people, we have an auto feed, and it will slowly advance the tool on its own. The biggest thing you have to watch for at this point is don't let this travel too far where you run this tool post into the spinning chuck. And with this, we're just going to keep making subsequent passes or subsequent cuts until we get down to the dimension we're going for. That was the one that I had missed yesterday. And you can see right now it's not moving super fast, but it's making a much more consistent cut. Let's bring you in. Now we can speed this up, and if we have a lot of material to remove, doing it at a faster rate will remove it a lot quicker. Just remember, when you get down close to your final dimension, slow the auto feed back down so that you get a smoother finish with your final cut. Now, how far are we going to go? We're going to let this feed all the way down until just shy of running this into that spinning chuck. It makes a racket and you'll break the machine and have Campbell utter words under his breath about you. Once we get there, we're going to disengage that auto feed. Just push it back down. That will stop advancing. We're going to pull the tool off the surface, go back to the start, and make the next cut. And we're going to go with until we get pretty close. So after a couple cuts, we're going to measure this, see how close we are. We don't want to take too much off. And I'm going to stop right about there. Back that out, and then move this back to the start and take another cut. And we'll keep doing that, and after a couple I'll come in and we'll measure this. Now I sped up the feed a little bit. You can see it's traveling a lot faster. But it's leaving a much coarser finish. To get our final dimension, we'll have to slow this back down again. And isn't quite a long tip, it's not breaking. Slow it down to get a better finish. And at the end, don't let your cutting tool slam into the shoulder you're making. That last little bit, turn off the auto feed. That last 1/8 of an inch or so do it by hand. We're actually close enough there, we want to double check our measurements because we don't want to go too small. So I'll grab the micrometer, open it up enough. Where's my scale? This part should be to 650 or 650 thousandths of an inch. And we are at, I'm trying to get the wrong way, 662. So we get 12 thousand more to take. So I am going to slow this back down. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in and touch off. Okay. Just going to come off the edge. Turn you guys a little bit. See if you can see what I'm looking at. Okay. So I stopped it. I had come in and touched off. Now I'm going to zero out scale on here. And we said we needed 12 thousandths off of there. Half of 12 thousandths is going to be 6. Now, there could be play in this of a thousandths or so, but I'm going to come to, we'll make it so we have to come back for a final cleanup. I'm going to advance the tool 5 thousandths of an inch. Makes a very small cut. Makes a very small cut. We're going to run that, and then we're going to check it, slow the feed down, and do our finished cut to get it as smooth as we can. Now, at this very end, I'm not too concerned about it because that's going to be turned to a smaller dimension when we turn around anyway. Okay, back here, grab that micrometer again. Use the ratchet to tighten it up so we get the right tension. There we go. And we are at 652. So we're just going to take the tiniest of cuts. We're going to slow this back down because we're so close to being right on. Okay, we've just finished turning to a dimension, which means we were just starting with something bigger, turning it down to a smaller dimension, just taking subsequent passes down the length of this. Our dimension in our drawing says 650 thousandths for the handle part of this. The micrometer here, I just checked the calibration knob. It's right on. I'm going to use the ratchet to set the amount of tension, and then I'm going to lock it so it doesn't move, and I'm going to try and bring it up here so you guys can see. And I'm going to come around here. If I can get it to focus on it, there we go. 650 thousandths right on. So now the next step is going to be to knurl it, which is to cut that crosshatch pattern that gives you the grip on any handle on a tool. And we're going to get set up and we'll start there. Okay, now we're going to set up the knurling tool. First thing we're going to do is get the tool itself square with our piece. So I'm going to loosen up the nut on the top of the tool post, grab a little square, hold it flat against my workpiece, and bring it along against the tool holder, turn it until I'm touching all the way along. Then snug that up. And again, don't over tighten stuff, just good and snug. Kind of the German, make it good and tight. So now that's square to my piece. Next thing is to check for height, because we want to make sure that both this top wheel and the bottom wheel are both contacting our workpiece evenly. So I'm going to turn that in until we're just about there, and I can see I'm way low. Loosen that off and bring that up some. Turn this in, snug that up, and I'm going to try and turn each wheel. Add a little tension. Well, the bottom one's touching, but the top one's not quite, so we were a little high. Just did that, it dropped a little when I did that. Now, oh, still a little bit more. We're hitting the stopper here. Back that out a little, so that will go down further. And let's check that again. Hey, now both wheels are touching equally. Actually, let's come up a little bit. There. Both are touching. We zeroed in on it. Make that snug. Back it out, come to the start of our piece. It's not touching. Now I've slowed the speed of the lathe itself down quite a bit, just by adjusting the gearbox. Now when we turn it on, it's turning a lot slower. I'm going to feed this in. As soon as it touches, we're going to start to see a bit of a pattern there. We're going to put a little bit of pressure in on this. It's probably the only lathe tool I'm going to tell you to put any amount of pressure on the tool. Adjust it in. If you want to see how it's looking, we'll stop the machine for a second. That's looking pretty good. Maybe just a touch more pressure. And Always keep an eye, make sure that this doesn't back off any. Because on this machine itself, we need a little bit of adjustment in the lock on this one. Right about there, we're going to start feeding it down the length of our piece. Now, before I get too far, I just want to double check that, see how it's looking. It's making the pattern we want, which is awesome. And I'm going to slowly take that down the length of my piece. I'm trying to be consistent here. Now when you're cutting knurling, don't try to stop in the middle or back up or try and make a second pass at it. If you do, you'll never get those little lines to line up where they're touching. So all it would do is make a mess of your knurling. So that's why we stop a couple times at the start to make sure it's doing what we want, and then travel the whole length of the piece. One pass. And when we're done, we get that nice cross hatch pattern for the knurling. And it looks pretty good. And that is as far as we go at this end. Now we're going to turn this around. We've got everything we can do at this point done on this end of the handle. We're going to flip it around. The other end, I'm losing my focus there. The other end is already center drilled and faced. Now we're going to turn it down to a dimension, and we have to do a little math. Ooh, I keep losing focus. A little math to see where we're going to turn this end down to where we're going to stop. And my hand gets in there and throws off the focus. So we'll have to do a little bit of math, but that's probably in the next one.